Hiya folks, how's it going? Today I am talking about a game that I have had on my shelf behind me for a very long time, but for some reason I just haven't talked about it on here. I guess I must have just kind of forgotten to talk about it, which is a bit strange considering I was a big Jane Austen fan as a kid growing up. Perhaps from that you've guessed what today's game is. If you haven't, today we are talking about Good Society, a Jane Austen role-playing game. Good Society takes place in the Regency era of England, about the moneyed classes. This era occurred on the cusp of the 18th and 19th century. It's well known for things like the Napoleonic Wars, the Federal era in America, and empire-waisted gowns. Good Society is based around the themes you might find in an Austen novel, such as marriage, reputation, and money. The creators of this game have acknowledged that as this is based off a historical era, it wasn't the best time for everybody. If you want, you can play a game that interrogates this historical setting, or they've allowed you the freedom to throw away all that historical baggage. It's all about what you and your players want. I will admit, I found learning the rules of this game a little bit daunting. This is due to the fact that I think for me there aren't any mechanics that I am overly familiar with already or that seem traditional to the tabletop role-playing game world. The mechanics in this game are based around negotiation with other players and triggering events for your characters. Something that definitely sets this game apart from a lot of other ones off the bat is that you don't just play your own character. You're going to be playing more than one character in this game. The character that you'll be playing most of the time is your major character. Alongside these major characters, the players will create side characters and connections to this major character. These will then help everyone play out the different stories. Players will take turn playing each other's side characters, and sometimes who is playing that side character will depend on who's in the scene and what is going to work. Sometimes the game master, the facilitator, will take on role-playing one of these side characters if everyone is needed in the scene. Something that I think this game does require is a fair amount of prep work from both the facilitator and the players. The group needs to choose playsets for the tone of their game, create their major characters, fill out backstories, find their desires, relationships, their archetypes, and their reputation. Thankfully, some of these aspects are actually managed through a deck which comes with the base game. Once these pieces of information are all gathered and you have the deck and some notes, the rest of the gameplay is pretty straightforward. Your main mechanic for actual gameplay is going to be tokens, whatever you choose them to be. You get two types of tokens in this game: resolve tokens and monologue tokens. The one you're going to be using most is resolve tokens. For each major character to achieve their goals, they probably will need to get in the way of another major character's goals. For this to occur, the player needs to come up with a plan for how they want the story to unfold, and then negotiate with the other player whose character is affected to create an agreeable resolution. If the two players come to an agreement as to what will happen to their two characters, the person who proposed the negotiation will give a resolve token to the other. There is also a monologue token. These must be used once per game cycle for a character to express their inner thoughts. Now, I have just mentioned cycles. These are designed to be sort of a novel's chapter phase. Roleplay will happen, there's a reputations phase, and a rumor and scandal phase. Then there is also an epistolary phase, where letters are written in exchange. Then, lastly, there is an upkeep phase where tokens are managed and things are set up for the next cycle. There are quite a few mechanics to keep on top of in this game, so I hope I've managed to explain the spirit of them. This book covers a lot of content in under 300 pages. There's mechanics explanations and examples of mechanics, help for the facilitator, and some context that is given to the Regency era. The art of this game is also beautiful. It's very bright and pretty and often is depicting a really evocative or interesting scene. The expressions on the faces are so lively and they tell you exactly what the characters are thinking. This game works with or without a game master, just depending on what you want to play. The facilitator can also take on the role of playing a major character themselves. The mechanics are really flexible, but I do think you want at least 3 players. There are a fair number of things that you'll need to photocopy or print from the book to bring to the table to actually play. You'll also need to source your own tokens. I am glad that you are allowed to just print what you need rather than having to buy, say, a big kit to play this game. I think there's a bit more paper management in this game than I'm used to in the indie tabletop scene. I will say this is probably a game that is going to require your players to be a little bit familiar with Jane Austen or the Regency era to be interested in playing. Though if you have open-minded players, I definitely think you could introduce them to this game. There's no combat in this game, so if you're looking for your fix for that one, you're better off looking elsewhere. But there's a lot in this game about social intrigue and negotiation and society, which is really interesting in and of itself. The battles don't take place on the battlefield here, they take place in the ballroom. The game is about collaborative storytelling. However, that doesn't mean that every single major character is going to get a happy ending. That just really depends on how the gameplay goes. As I mentioned, there's a fair amount of intrigue and scheming that happens both in and sort of out of game to play this game. Players will have game secrets that they don't necessarily share with other players. I think if you are in a group that enjoys that social intrigue, this is absolutely a game to put on the table. If you're in a group that enjoys roleplay and social complications, you need this game. I will say though, if people are turned off by the aesthetic of the game, I don't know if the mechanics are going to draw them back in. They're really tied into the themes that the game's setting is based on. I also don't know if the sort of person who instantly is turned off by Regency or Jane Austen is going to allow themselves to consider having fun with this game. I paid about $85 Australian for this book and the accompanying deck, and it is just a beautifully made book and I think very much worth the price. So those were my thoughts on Good Society today. It really did surprise me how many mechanics there were in this game, all built around social interaction. It really feels like a game that has a series of interlocking moving parts where each action has a domino effect on what will happen to everyone else's story. Today I would like to ask you what you know of the Regency or Jane Austen era. Even if it's just a stereotype that you have heard, or maybe you were interested in it as a historical period. Please let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed today's episode, I highly encourage you to like and subscribe, maybe share with a friend. It just lets me know that I am making things you guys like. I hope you're all well, and I'll see you next time at the gaming table. Bye!